5 of us up here,
Okay.
including myself.
Do you have the people who are talking's names?
Yes, I'll introduce them.
Okay.
But it will be Mr. Chris Becker.
Okay.
I think everybody knows him. Lieutenant Michelle Robinson, a 6th District Public Information Officer. We'll also have Captain Jason Nemecek, Nemecek. He is the 6th District Commander.
Can you repeat his last name?
Absolutely, it's Nemecek, Nemecek. And then I am also going to be bringing in 2 detective sergeants. One is Dillard, Dillard, Hayes, Hayes, and Detective Sergeant David Williams. They are Michigan State Police detectives that were instrumental in this case, or that are investigating this case. We will have questions at the end, but please keep in mind this still is an active investigation. So if anything, any questions are of evidentiary type nature, we will not be able to answer those because it's an ongoing investigation.
Sure.
Are we all set with sound?
Yes.
Sound check. 3, 2, 1.
1, 2, 3. Check,
Okay.
check, check. Thank you. Sing us a song. No.
I would. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. I would like to begin by expressing our deepest condolences to the friends and family of Miss Ruby Garcia. This is a synopsis of the events of this investigation. On Friday, March 22nd at approximately 11:35 p.m., troopers from the Michigan State Police Grand Rapids Post were dispatched to a report of a deceased adult female on the shoulder of southbound US-131 at Leonard Street. Upon arrival, troopers discovered the body of 25-year-old Ruby Garcia of Grand Rapids. Based on initial observation and evidence at the scene, foul play was suspected. Through investigative leads, Garcia's vehicle was located on Saturday, March 23rd at 1:00 p.m., parked in a residential area north of South Haven in Allegan County. The vehicle was unoccupied and no suspect was located in the area. On Sunday, March 24th at 10:35 a.m., Allegan County Central Dispatch was contacted by an individual that was being sought by detectives for questioning. Allegan County deputies and troopers from the MSP Wayland Post responded to the 2200 block of 68th Street in Fenville, where they located the caller who was believed to be the individual involved in the death of Miss Garcia. He was taken into custody and lodged in the Kent County Jail. Detectives wish to thank the Kent County Sheriff's Office, Grand Rapids Police Department, Grand Rapids Fire Department, Allegan County Sheriff's Office, South Haven Police Department, the Michigan State Police Wayland Post, MSP 5th District Investigative Units, Central Dispatch 911 operators, and EMS for their assistance during this investigation. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Becker.
Good afternoon. This afternoon we filed a number of criminal charges against Brandon Ortiz-Vite, age 25. He was charged with 1 count of felony murder. Felony murder is a maximum penalty of life in prison without the possibility of parole. We filed 1 count of open murder charges. An open murder charge is a maximum penalty of life in prison, possibly with the possibility of parole. The 3rd charge would be 1 count of carjacking. That also is a life maximum. The 4th charge is carrying a concealed weapon, a felony with a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison. And the last charge is 1 count of felony firearm. The use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, specifically a homicide, that is a 2-year maximum penalty consecutive to any the underlying felony that he was convicted of. He was arraigned this afternoon, is my understanding, in the 61st District Court in front of Judge Faber. He was given no bond, and he remains in the Kent County Correctional Facility pending the next court hearing, which will be a probable cause conference. I do not have the specific date for that probable cause conference at this point in time. It is through the investigation, it is apparent that he and the victim, Ruby, were in a romantic relationship, so this is another case of a domestic violence homicide that we've seen, quite frankly, far too often over the last few years. I know many are asking about his immigration status. I know the Immigration and Naturalization Service did issue a statement regarding his status, and I think there is a statement available if anybody has not received that. At this point in time, that we'll see what happens to the court. We can't get into many more details than what already been disclosed here. I don't know if you want to turn over to them for questions or introduce the other individuals here.
Yeah, sir. Is there any questions?
Can you kind of just walk me through, to clarify, so Brandon, he called Allegheny County Dispatch and said, and essentially turned himself in, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Kind of just walk me through, sorry, I'm trying to, someone else has something. Are you able to disclose how we know, or how do we know that, how she got to the on the side of the road? Is that?
That's still part of the evidence process in the investigation, and we want to remind you that this is still an open, active investigation. That more details will come out as the court hearings come in, but that is part of the evidence that we really don't want to disclose at this point in time.
Did the shooting happen in the car while they were on the highway, or did it happen elsewhere?
We can say at least that
Okay.
it was in the car. It was right there. It did not happen elsewhere. We can at least say that.
Were they both in the car together?
Correct.
Were there other people in the car, or was it?
Not gonna get any. That's about all we can tell you.
Okay. In terms of, we have a statement from ICE. They had talked about how he was deported back in August of 2020, or September 2020, I believe. Managed to get back in. Can you kind of just walk us through, like, is this something that, we hear about issues at the border and crimes happening as a result of people coming in? Is this something that is happening here and can't come in frequently, or is this kind of just a one-off case where his
It's
immigration
not.
status doesn't?
It's not a one-off case because tomorrow there's a sentencing for Luis Fabian, who was we had this exact same. It was almost the exact same thing. It was a homicide last May in the city of Grand Rapids in a vehicle where there was a child transfer. So this is a second case in under a year where we've had a similar circumstance. The details are not exactly the same thing, but to say that this is not a one-off, this is something that has occurred before, and he's up for sentencing tomorrow. And I tried the case back in January. So to say, it's not a one-off. This is something we see, and I don't want to get too much into the politics of all that. But if you look at what's going on, Puertas Abiertas is a local organization dealing with domestic violence for Hispanic women in terms of the issues they're dealing with. And if you look at domestic violence, which is a domestic violence case, there is that circle of violence and control. And one of the things that's control is, okay, now you've got this immigration status and what pressure that puts on the victims in terms of not cooperating with police, not helping out law enforcement and stuff like that. So it's an entirely different dynamic that we do see in Kent County. This is, so we've got two cases now where it resulted in homicides, but that probably would, ignores all the other types of cases out there that are, your quote unquote normal, your low level that don't result in homicide, that we're, as law enforcement, want to have cooperations with the victim, but this adds another element in terms of why victims don't want to cooperate. So that does pose a challenge for law enforcement.
So Brandon was illegally in the U.S. at the time?
From what ICE, you got the ICE statement, so that's, I rely on that. That's probably the best, statement, more than
Sure.
what I can get into.
Can you say if Garcia was driving the car?
I'm not gonna say that at this point in time.
Are you able to disclose the carjacking? Was he trying to carjack her vehicle, or are you able to disclose?
It's part of the case, so it wasn't somebody else. There's only two people involved here, so leave it at that.
Talking a little bit, because I know you had mentioned when you were talking about how they were involved in a romantic relationship and this false pattern with some, a pattern of domestic violence murders that we've seen in Kent County. Can you kind of just walk me through what steps is the county taking to try and reduce the number of these incidents from happening? I know there has been talks about domestic violence court, you know, where does that stand? Can you kind of just talk about the efforts that are?
We've been working. We've got the DVAN, the Domestic Violence Action Network, is up and running. We just hired an executive director for that DVAN network that started this week. The domestic violence court has been an ongoing process. It's taken a little bit longer than I think we all hoped it would in terms of, and because we're trying to do it the right way. We're trying to do it, different. It's not just, assigning a court. We want to treat it like a true treatment court in terms of, getting these people, getting the help to the suspects and the defendants who are involved in it, as well as support for those victims, like I've talked about, getting the victims that have the support that they need to get through these situations, whether it be housing, whether it be childcare, whether it be, whatever the issue is for that specific victim. So we're hoping to do that obviously this year. I'm not going to give you a timeline, but we're getting closer. We've been meeting almost weekly, if not every other week, with 61st District Courts, Safe Haven, Puertas Abiertas, all the probation departments, trying to come up with the guidelines. And we're not just throwing things together, trying to be as meticulous as we can so we have a good program that really has an impact on domestic violence here in Kent County, using those ARPA funds.
Real quick, how long have they been in a relationship? Do you guys, is that something?
I don't know that off the, so.
And then just real quick, in terms of the investigation, was he cooperative with, MSP investigators? Was he forthcoming about the information and what exactly had happened?
That's something that's part of the investigation too. Leave that.
And he's had other run-ins with the police. This is definitely not his first time.
Gonna stay away from that as well.
And a lot of those questions will be answered if you have not received that statement from Immigration and Customs. That I do have copies of that statement for you, so you'll have that information that will address those issues.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, Chris, I don't know if you could talk to about this, talking about, his prior run-ins with law enforcement in Kent County. I cited just off the top of my head, I believe it started in 2017, and then there was an incident in 2018, and then the 2020 traffic violations happened with GRPD, and that's when, he was deported. Can you walk me through, I guess, when law enforcement encounters someone who is undocumented, I guess, why are they necessarily deported right away? Why did it take?
More in terms of law enforcement handles of them.
I guess, can you kind of just explain how that process works? Does it have to be a certain level of charge that will have someone?
Probably more of a nice question.
Yeah, that's going to be
done.
something,
Okay.
if, let's just say in a general traffic stop situation, if somebody is identified as an undocumented individual, then that is where the troopers will then reach out to Immigration and Customs and verify that information. From then, it would be an Immigration Customs enforcement type of action, and so that's where they would take over from that at that point in time.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do as far as our office can't say, hey, do you take them or don't take them? That's completely up to the
Yeah.
Immigration and Nationalization Service.
I just think that's something that a lot of people are wondering, is like, if he's had run-ins with the law since 2017, how was he able to stay in the country for, an extra 3 years or whatnot? But thank you for clarifying that. I guess one of the last questions I have, and this is kind of just circling back to domestic violence and it being an issue here in Kent County, and in West Michigan, why would you encourage, people who are in a relationship that isn't healthy to come forward and seek out help, whether it's through law enforcement or through organizations in the community? I don't know who wants to speak to it, but.
I think, anytime, we don't want to see this happen. This is the ultimate, the worst case domestic violence scenario. And generally, you see an escalation at least. It's not the first time that somebody just all of a sudden hauls off and kills their significant other. It's a process. So the earlier you seek and you're comfortable going out, and even if you don't want to come to law enforcement, we would encourage you, because we can intervene, and we're not trying to lock everybody up for every domestic violence, but to try and get them help and intervene. But there is a Safe Haven, there is the YWCA, there are organizations where you can go to get help, even if for some reason you don't want to come to law enforcement. But I think the key thing is to try and seek that help. There's other people out there that are in your situation that can guide you through the process, that may make you more comfortable in then filing a report down the road, because we understand there is a lot going on. It's a relationship where you probably love the individual. That's why you're in the relationship with them to begin with. But things go bad, things happen, whatever the stressors there are, and there is a way to break that cycle. But you can't necessarily break the cycle without getting help, whether it be from law enforcement or those other agencies.
And you said this was a domestic violence relationship. What other signs of domestic violence were seen in this relationship? Did she have a PPO against him? Was there any other signs that?
I'm not getting into the science. To my understanding, there's no PPO as far as I know of. But they were in a romantic relationship. Beyond that, I'm not going to speak to what was going on in the relationship.
Okay.
Just real quick, are you able to say what type of car he had stolen? I know you had mentioned it was her vehicle, but what type of?
We have to stay out of that. That's a fact for the case too.
In the court documents, it mentions the pistol that he had. Have you guys ran tests on the pistol to see if it's been used in previous crimes?
I don't know if it's
That will be part of the forensic evaluations. There's still, like I said, there still is a very active investigation that a lot of forensic evidence is still going to be followed through on. So that will be something that we look into, but like I said, still active investigation.
Thank you. And also, in the same document, he says he told police that he had purchased a gun illegally. Would you like to comment any further on, what your office is doing to counter illegal firearms being purchased in the county?
Yeah, we're charging. We're charging when we do have them. The key thing is, we have to be able to show, who exactly had the gun, and if we can trace that gun back to who he purchased it from. Yeah, we're always interested in doing that. It's very difficult cases to do that. It's not readily available evidence. So in this case, we charged a CCW, and with all the other charges, receiving and concealing a stolen firearm is a relatively small case. And in terms of all that else, we did not charge in this case. But we're charging them. I know law enforcement's investigating them. I know all the agencies are always out there looking for guns, and we do charge them when we have the evidence to do that. But to show that every single gun is stolen, it becomes difficult because gun registration, you got to get those records, and that becomes difficult at times.
And lastly, I want to follow up, Marissa, a little bit with your question as far as individuals that are in a domestic violence situation. It isn't always just females. It can be both females and males in a domestic violence situation. And we encourage those individuals to have that courage to step up and say, I need to get out of that cycle of violence. And for anyone that is in that situation, there are programs there to help, whether they come to a law enforcement agency, if they come to the prosecutor's office. There are individuals out there that are willing and have their doors open to assist someone to get out of that situation. So once again, we want to thank everybody for being here today. I want to thank the detectives for coming in, Captain Jason Nemisek, 6th District Commander, for being here, and of course Prosecutor Becker for being here. But once again, our condolences to the family and friends of Miss Ruby Garcia, and they will remain in our thoughts. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And who does not have
I don't
a
have
statement?
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
get you a copy.
And then, I'm sorry, you guys said it was a stolen vehicle?